Today, Britain's narrow canal system is being developed for pleasure cruising. But 100 years ago, the waterways were crowded with fleets of working boats. Even then, their future was in doubt. The railways were taking over. Ultimately, for hundreds of canal families, it was to mean the end of a means of livelihood and the end of a jealously guarded way of life. Charlie Green, like all good boatmen, comes from a canal family. Most of his brothers and sisters have left the canal. His father, Joe Green, retired a dozen years ago.
I have 21 children. 15 alive now, out of 21. They was all born on the canal, out of my own earnings. I never had no family house, none of my children. They hadn't come out, because some of them was married when I had the last. I had my first wife killed, Birmingham, left me with 7. She's stepping on the boat in Campill Locks, going down Campill Lock. She was stepping on the boat, and her foot slipped, and I dropped between the boat and the wall, and the boat swung over on her, fractured 2 of her ribs and moved her heart. And a man, I wasn't there, I was with the other boat in front, and a man come out, he was attacked with influenza, and he jumped in the cut and fetched her out. He'd just come from the doctor and he jumped in the water and fetched my wife out. And she lived about 6 hours. Well, we used to run the 2 boats. We used to have the fuller cabins. And they used to some sleep in one and some in the other.
The cabins were cramped, even for a small family. Chocolate Charlie Atkins, still working a boat on the canals in the Cheshire area, raised his family of 4 on board, single-handed.
The cabins is registered for so many. Well, the proper register was for a man, wife and 2 children under 12. But you could carry on 3 children. And then you had to have another cabin on the front end of the boat. And they was allowed to put 2 in there under 12. But I carried on for about 4 years, and I got a cabin put on the other end of the boat then.
There were rules on the canal and checkpoints everywhere. Men from the council would come aboard to see that the cabins were really clean, that all the children went to school.
We used to go to school at every place where we stopped at. So Port, Birmingham, Branford, Middlesex, all over the place. I used to have a card, what they call a travelling card. Any school they used to take them in, just for half a day or a day where we stopped at. All my children were scholars, much alive, all lot of them, sons and daughters.
Jack James, an ex-boatman, like most of his contemporaries, never received an orthodox education.
I've never been to a school, not inside of a school, no. But when we were kiddies, and we could just get out onto the towpaths and follow the horses along on the towpaths and sit on the cabin tops of the boats and watch the railway trucks go along. And then we used to have a bit of slate and a bit of chalk, and as the railway trucks were going along, we'd take down the letters off of the railway trucks, not knowing what it stood for, and we'd keep that and then mark it down on a little bit of paper and take it in to the tollkeeper. And we'd give him this bit of paper and say, what does this stand for? And he'd look, he'd say, there you are. You've been chalking up the railway trucks again, haven't you? See, I say, come here, let me have a look at it. And pick it up and say, tell you what it stood for. Yes, you got that right. All that sort of thing, see. And we only wanted telling once what it stood for. And we knew then what to put down if we wanted to mark Banbury down, Oxford or Bedworth or any other place along the canal. See, there we knew what to put.
Joe and Rosie Skinner, who retired some years ago, still live aboard their own boat in Coventry. Joe never went to school. His wife was more fortunate.
Yes, I went to school. I had 7 years and a half. Started when I was 3, left when I was 10 and a half. It helped a good lot when you was a scholar on the boats, because there was different people has come and asked you to read letters and things for her.
Reading letters was also a job for the tollkeepers along the canal. At Alderley, near Wolverhampton, the Shropshire Union had a toll office at its junction with the Stafford and Worcester. Here, in the 1920s, the boatmen, after having their cargoes gauged, would collect their mail and get the tollkeeper, Sam Lomas, to read it for them.
As well as ordinary letters, other letters I used to write and read for was the love letters. And of course in those days the paper used to be what I call perfumed, smelled very, very scented. And of course the envelopes used to bear some kind of particular flower, either a wallflower or a little daffodil or a little crocus. And you could always tell that when you opened the letter that it was either from a boy or a girl writing to their sweetheart. And we used to say, "Dear Lizzie, we're loading at Brentford for Birmingham, and I shall be there on such and such a date. Try and arrange to see me atop of Gas Street or atop of Tipton 3. I shall be there at such and such a time."
You used to keep a writing pad this, and envelopes, and a stamp if you hadn't got a stamp. You hadn't got to bother, just tell him what you wanted put in. He'd do all that. Lovely letters you used to put together and send them. No snotty letters, nothing of that. They're all straight and above board. And they used to make it well worth his while to write that letter, you see.
Grindley Brook was one of the most important stopping places on the canal. Here the waterway was owned by the Shropshire Union Railway and Canal Company. They also owned the trade boats and the horses that pulled them. Jack Roberts was a boatman on the Shroppie till the company folded in 1921. He traded the canals from the Mersey to the mountains in North Wales, from Ellesmere Port to Llangollen.
Well, the canal in those days, as I remember it, from a boy of about 9 or 10, this canal was, the towing path was white, the stone was white, and the grass was mowed, and there was a great lot of flower, musk, yellow musk growing up the fronts, you see, and everything, the bridges was whitened, and the drawbridge was painted, number on each bridge, and that happened all the way through, from one end to the other, from Ellesmere Port to Newtown or Llangollen, which the case may be.
When I first came here, it was all commercial traffic, and we were passing over 1,000 commercial boats a week. There was no pleasure craft at all. Matter of fact, in those days, we'd neither room nor time for pleasure craft. And our approximate tonnage per month was 36,000 tonnes. That was import, export and internal traffic, consisting of coal, aluminium, copper, spelter, flour, sugar, all kinds of commodities. And of course the chief was the horse-drawn boat. We hadn't really become mechanically minded. I do remember years later when the last horse left the canal and that all the boats were motor propelled, mechanically minded we'd all become. And I used to think to myself, thank God I wasn't born a boathorse.
It was a very hard life for an horse because there's a many a time you started at 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning and you wouldn't be finished till 10 or 11 the next night. And you got to be at work all the while.
Horses were bought along the canal from fairs, farmers, gypsies, even coal pits. The animal had to be sure-footed and need the least attention while it was towing.
Each horse, the Shropshire Union, had a name and a number, and that horse would be booked to you. They was all well trained, and going through the tunnel, he'd hang his head over the rail like that, you see, so as his ears shouldn't catch the arch of the tunnel. That's how everything was. After they'd been on about 3 months, you could just say, in the dark or daylight, carry on, he'd take you. With the exception of locks, like, and drawbridges, you'd have to go and attend to the rope and all that, you know. So they couldn't pull the bridges up very well.
Well, mules when I used to work. Well, I used to fancy mules better than I did horses. Better to work on the towpath. We were sure-footed. Well, we got stables a distance apart to put them. Polesworth and Alliston, Nuneaton, Hawkesbury Stop, and Brinklow, and Newbold, Morton, and Willoughby, and Branston, and Bugby, and Ayford, and Blisworth, and Stoke, Bottom of Stoke, Stockbridge, Causgrove, and Linford, and Finney.
The Willow Wren Canal Carrying Company still operates from a canal basin in Bull's Bridge, Middlesex. Leslie Morton was the director for 40 years.
The boatmen used to not earn a very good living. They had the sort of home that they had been born in and that they liked. They liked the homes on the boats. They'd no rent or rates or fuel bills, certainly no coal bills when they carried coal. Nearly as I can remember, they used to pull out about between £5, possibly £7 a week, which, if analysed, was very little indeed, because running a pair of boats is not a one-man job, it's a family job.
When you used to leave London, they only used to give you so much money to carry you back to Birmingham. You'd got to make that and pay your horses stabling and pay tugging through these tunnels. Used to be £8 for a pair of boats through these tunnels, for a tug to pull you through the tunnels. And they used to give you £6 to start with. And I'd got to, when we had those boats, that was it would last you 7 days when you got to Birmingham. Pay stabling up for them every night. You hadn't got much to throw away.
Comparing the boatman with his boss, they worked very harmoniously together, and he respected his boss, and he looked upon him and spoke as him as more boss. And when he gave him an order to go and load a cargo and tell him where it was for, he could rely on him doing it. And there were such times when these loads were what we call fly loads.
Boats carrying fly loads were lighter than the usual vessels, carried less than 20 tons and worked day and night. The last flyboat to leave the Shropshire Union Canal was in 1919.
There was a trench fly, a Shrewsbury fly, pottery fly. The pottery fly was a 4-handed fly. The Shrewsbury fly was a 3-handed fly. Next one was the Brummagem fly. That was the main fly of the canals, that was. That was 2 trips a week from Ellesmere Port to Birmingham. That was 84 mile each way. You only had one night a week in, that was Friday night, because the captain lived at Birmingham. And that was the only night, but it was a pleasure. You never seen that boat wet where you put the cargo. It was always dry, because when they got to Ellesmere Port, it was offloading and loading the same time. And there was a man to every job.
I used to be hand with a flyboat, mate. Used to be 4 on us on one flyboat. Used to work 2 and 2, see? 2 in and 2 out. Right up to Trevor we used to go, right up the bottom of the mountains. We used to take Cheshire Farmer stuff, all for the cattle. See, years gone by when I was about, there was no railways and nothing, no transport up right up to Welsh Pool and Trevor and Llangollen and all. There was no, it all had to go by water up there. We had, I think there must have been 80 boats running up there, but they used to have 10 flyboats. Go with horses, not motors, go with horses, change horses every so fair. And seeing there was 4 of us on this boat, and we never used to carry above 16 or 17 ton. And we were unloaded and loaded up all the way we went.
There was an old saying in the old days, nothing was too heavy and the weather was never too dark. The traffic went through. Wonderful. The only time as they were really stopped was when the elements were too bad, such as when the canal was frozen up.
Oh, we had a job to get along. We had about a day atop of Curtis. Couldn't get through the ice, couldn't meet the empty boats when we was loaded. It took us no winter water to go into Birmingham and back. They kept breaking it and breaking it till we couldn't meet the boats.
They used to have what they call an ice boat. And they'd put horses on it, and so many men to keep rocking it about, and the horses would pull it and break the ice for us. I saw as much as 21 horses on an ice boat, once a few years back.
I remember it when you couldn't break it. There's 20 horses on it at Nantwich. Before it would break the ice, went along the top. And all the men was rolled off on the ice, had to walk off on the path. There's no one hurt anyway.
At Stockton, we sunk the ice boat there. We pulled her that hard, and I stopped dead in the ice, and we backed the horses, and I shot off the ice straight back and in it, and down I went. 3 men went down with her.
Near Northwich, Cheshire, one of the 7 wonders of the canals, the Anderton Lift. Opened in 1875, it lowers boats from the Trent and Mersey Canal to the River Weaver, 50 feet below. Chocolate Charlie's boat, the Mendip, is now one of a mere dozen working boats using the lift in a week. But in its heyday, queues of boats would form at both levels, the crews impatient to collect cargo from the ships on the Mersey or deliver china clay to the potteries.
An interesting thing about the boatmen working on the canal, they will, and always have done, taken turns. But there's a point of difference which usually was settled rather violently. A certain distance from each lock both ways, there's a post, that is the distance post. And the boat who is inside that approaching the lock has the right of way. And anything coming the other way should hold for the pair who has the right of way to come through. Now, as there are no referees, and as they don't believe each other in any case, there used to be some quite useful scraps.
There's no doubt about it, they was fighters, the majority of them. And they used to fight sometimes over a lock, sometimes over a bridge, and sometimes they would have a fight to see which was the best man.
I hit a bloke one day at the Newson above the motorboat. A bloke, he run and clapped in me one, and he was getting into the gate, and I drew my fist back and I hit him right here. He went over the gate and down about 40 steps, split his head open right across. He was speechless drunk with porter, drinking stout. It was one of the sort unions that got stout on. They was a drinking that, and they was that all drunk on it. He come and started about me, and I hit him and I knocked him, and they had to take him to the hospital. They had to pump stout off his stomach before they could operate on him, just put a stitches in his head.
When I was a lad, I left my father when I was 15, and I went to a young fellow after he come out of the army, and I stopped with him for about 2 years, and he got married. He'd been married about 5 years, and he met with another fellow, and he wanted to go through the lock, and he wanted to come through the lock, and they just had a bit of a bother, and he come to a fight, and when he come to a fight, they struck at one another, and a big friend of mine, a big mate of mine, he slipped down a wall and broke his neck, and he was killed right away. It was just over the lock, that was.
There's 24 locks in Cheshire locks. I've fought at every one of them locks. And my mother, she'd fight any man, and if I didn't fight, it'd give me some. It was all fight in them locks, Cheshire locks. The women used to say, I pulled my bloody clog off and pared the bloody brains out.
I wasn't much of a fighter. I used to try and talk my way out of it. Till I got older, mind you. Because at the finish, you've got to meet people again, the same people again, and while you're agging a toss over a lock or anything like that, the job's over and you're gone and you're friends. That's all there was to that. But it used to be very, very... The years back, that used to be one of the biggest things on the canal.
After a fight, the boatmen sometimes settled their differences over a pint at the nearest pub, which were usually situated at the top of a flight of locks. The pubs offered stabling for the horses and occasional credit for the boatmen who wanted to celebrate.
Well, the first time I got drunk was a New Year at a place called Narrowboat Junction. And when we came out of the booze, we went to a friend's house to loose a New Year in. And then he fixed us up with some tater wine till about 1 o'clock in the morning. And a friend of mine, he was playing the accordion, he fell down and bursted it. I bent down to pick him up and I fell with him. The fellows on the boozer, he took him home and then come back and put me up and carry me to the boat. And I lost one of my clogs and I was striking matches at 8 o'clock in the morning trying to find it. It was daylight. I come to a place called Cadbury's, and when I got there I was that bad I couldn't load the boat with chocolate. And the gaffer came and he told me to get some tea without sugar and vinegar and all sorts, but it was no good. I was drunk for 2 days after. And the only way I got sober, I went and had 7 pints 2 days after, and I was sober after. That was really a good Christmas, that was.
The social life on the canal, you made your own. You'd really start from one end of the canal, you'd weigh your time up. Well, we shall go to so-and-so tonight. We'll say Ellesmere Port. We'd stop at the trooper, the stabling there, you know. Put the horse in, pay the stabling, go and sit down and have a pint if you wanted one, and then, of course, have a good natter, sometimes a song.
They used to call them ditties, and they used to make them up themselves. And although a lot of them was illiterate and uneducated, they were really good at this. Now, I remember one old chap, his name was Jim. They'd say to him, "Jim, sing us a ditty." And he'd stand up with his belt and his big brass bottle in the front, and he'd start to roll his back, and then he'd pull his pipe out and he'd say, "You can do just what you like with another man's wife, but keep your hands off, she's mine."
There was a fella, a big mate of mine up at Greenleaf at Whitchurch, outside Whitchurch. His name was Tom Wildy. And he always used to sing one song when he got in the local, and that was "Keep Your Hands Off, That's Mine." And he still sings it today at Greenleaf. Yeah.
Well, then there was another old ditties they used to sing which amused me very much. Not as I used to sit in these pubs, but my office was situated at King's Lock next door. And naturally, I couldn't miss seeing what was going on with them and hearing all these songs. And I remember another ditty which was really good. "Love is such a funny thing, it makes a man a fool." The other favourite hymn was, "Throw out the lifeline, someone is sinking today." Throw out the lifeline, throw out the lifeline, someone is sinking today.
The only place there used to be a proper place, there used to be a bit of sport with singing. Plants Lock, to the side of Air Castle Tunnel, in the 3 Bells. We used to get in there at night, and there used to be some sport in there at night. Used to be the boat women there with the curtain-bodied sun and the long aprons, singing and dancing in their good old boatman songs. Oh, there used to be blokes on us could play a concertina and sing. When I used to go through that tunnel up there, I used to be singing, and a concertina going through that tunnel all one end of the other. Used to be a lot of blokes on the canal could play a concertina, and they are the finest music you can ever know is a concertina.
It'll be very quiet today because there's nothing travelling on the canal. Only pleasure crafts in the summer months. It might go a day, it might go 2 days, and you wouldn't see another working boat the same as yourself. And the same when you tie up at night. You go to a place, there used to be 5 or 6 boats tied up there. Now goes weeks, months at a time, and nobody ever goes there. Because you know, boats travelling on the canal now. There's only 12 of us. And all the other firms he's finished. It's very, very quiet in the winter. There's many a time now I go a week, a fortnight at a time, just being on my own. I just tie the boat up at night and switch the wireless on, and that's all you hear till next morning or see. It's very, very quiet today.
Keep your hands off, that's mine. Keep your hands off, that's mine. You can do just what you like with any other little girl, but keep your hands off, that's mine. Now first he lost his heart and married Mabel. He took a trip to the dear old Isle of Wight. Spooning anywhere, couples over there, going through a tunnel dark at night. Mabel started giggling in the darkness. Oh, Percy, do stop kissing me, said she. Percy shouted out, will you strike a light? There's somebody kissing their wife instead of me. Keep your hands off, that's mine. Keep your hands off, that's mine. You just be careful what you do. That little bit of fancy work, it doesn't belong to you. But she's a nice girl, I know, and she squeezes absolutely fine. You can do just what you like with any other fella's wife, but keep your hands off, that's mine.